How are you? What are you
I'm,
working on these days? I mean, we
oh
both
my
have
God.
this speaking thing in October, but you've got a lot to do before then.
I have got a lot to do. So, man, what am I doing? I kind of filled up my summer a little more than I want to. I love working, so it's almost therapeutic for me because I'm a little bit of a workaholic. But man, what do I got going on? So I do fitness coaching. JefFit Transformation was the original name of it, but I'm kind of going to I've got some irons in the fire to kind of morph things into something different, which that'll come out a little bit later. So I'm working on a couple things there that'll be hopefully big and fun and exciting. And then I work with a company called Giant Lifting, which is a company my best friend started. It's a exercise equipment company. And when I had a construction company, that's right before the pandemic, you know, all the gyms shut down, and he was just getting started with that company, and everyone wanted a home gym. So it kind of put him on the map. Like they were using my construction trucks, my dump trailers, all kinds of things to do deliveries, and all the gyms shut down. Like, so people wanted gym equipment, and then companies like Rogue, which I know you're familiar with, most people are, all the big name companies kind of sold out of their inventory. So people started going off grid to try to find places that had equipment. And we were just getting started. So we had a small, wasn't even a warehouse. I'd call it a really big storage unit full of our first equipment that we'd had shipped over in the Giant Lifting name. And he had purchased. So it's not like we're reselling someone else's stuff. It's all his stuff, but he's just getting started. So it was a big risk because, you know, you're putting money into that and hoping that, you know, you'll get the money back. And so it's a huge risk, but it all worked out perfectly with the timing. I mean, I hate to say that COVID was a good thing, but in
For
terms
that,
of
it was.
it really worked out. And so we had a small very small warehouse, big storage unit, kind of full of equipment that should have lasted about a year of doing local inventory stuff. And that sold out in a week and a half. And so just reinvesting that money. Now we have two warehouses in Washington, one in Arizona and another one going in Arizona here soon. So expanding and got an online. It's going really, really well. So
So
putting a
let
lot
me
of my
ask you a
eggs in
quick
that.
question about that.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate. I built my CrossFit gym in my home and at my work before the pandemic. So once the pandemic hit, I was fine. But what I struggle with, like say the new purple Rogue bar came out, I was very excited about that. I wanted
Yeah.
to get it. But shipping is almost as much as the bar. So I'm like, it's just not worth it to me because at this point it's a novelty. And so I've backed off buying a lot of fitness equipment because the shipping is so expensive because obviously it's all heavy. Well, at least for what I use and what you use, it's all heavy stuff. So the shipping kills me.
100%. And that's where we're kind of looking to really make some
Mm.
compete with other companies. Like, and a lot of companies don't, they're all online. And so they charge similar prices for shipping. So where we can really shine is that we have our stores are not just warehouses, they're actually showrooms too. So we have a showroom there where you can actually come in and buy the equipment just like you would in any other store.
That's
And,
awesome.
you know, that shaves at least a lot of local people on shipping. And then we do deliveries as well, up to, I think, 200 miles for either 50 or $100. So if someone even orders a huge home gym, you know, instead of paying someone to deliver it or whatever, I get some real good value there. But yeah, shipping is something that we are working on and trying to shave costs and stuff for people. So, and that's the idea of continuing to put warehouses across the country, you know, up here,
Mm.
down there. Hopefully at one point, you know, I was actually talking to Sean and a couple people I know in Salt Lake who have warehouse space themselves and kind of putting hubs across the country so that we can do, you know, have different hubs with warehouses and then do local deliveries there. And then sort of kind of phase out the having to pay for, you know, shipping and stuff. Cause like you said, someone orders $150 bar and they're paying $100 for shipping. Well, the cost you would save on buying a, you know, a nice bar at a good price, it just kind of goes out the window. So yeah, no, exactly. That's the biggest thing with all this is shipping for sure.
Yeah. If you could figure that out, you would definitely give Rogue a run for its money. Cause I am just the biggest Rogue fan. Like all my equipment's Rogue. But
Oh, they're great.
if you could figure out the shipping and I didn't have to pay the same price on shipping as I did the other, I would gladly go. Well, not gladly. I'd have to check out the product, but I would definitely go and try a different product.
For sure. And you know,
Like that
that's where,
GHD. I would
yeah,
love to try that out. Yeah.
that thing's badass. Yeah, it's actually pretty well built. It's actually pretty big. It's almost like this, we call it the Death Star. It's a big thing,
Yeah.
but it works really well and it's got really good parts. And that's the thing, is we do compete with Rogue in terms of quality. We got, I mean, no question, Rogue makes good stuff, but to some degree, with those types of companies, you're paying for the name, and so when you can find a company that is equal in terms of quality, but is still, they're like us, we're still trying to build our brand, and part of the way we build our brand is we reduce our profit margin so that we can offer better value to customers, and so we can come in at a lot lower price point, but at the same quality, and so. We've done really well locally because a lot of CrossFit gyms who traditionally use Rogue are looking to save money. When they company comes to us and they want to start a CrossFit gym, and they get a loan or something like this, it's the difference between outfitting their gym with our stuff and their stuff. Might be, once it's all said and done, it might be a difference of $150,000 or $200,000 or more. And so,
yeah,
but
that's significant.
the equipment's and if the equipment's all the same, I mean, who the hell cares, right?
Yeah, I love that. So my equipment at my center is not Rogue, and we got it from a local gym who had outfitted it with less expensive equipment, and it's functional. But I noticed the difference, like on the pull-up bars, there is like zero grip, and on even on like the lifting bars, there's no, like we talked about, knurling, and so it's like it's functional, but it's not the best. And I don't get my best workouts up there because I'm like a little prima donna, and I want my Rogue stuff. So. If you have good stuff that can, like, for a better price, then you definitely will do well, for sure.
Well, sure. And you talked about the knurling, and if someone's a real athlete, like yourself and like me, like you come to really appreciate the little things. I mean, a lot of people go in and they'll buy some equipment. They don't really consider those things. They just like the color of something, or it looks like it's built well. But, when you're a performance athlete like yourself, you look at, like little things like that, like the knurling is really important. It's like you got to keep a grip on it, especially if you're going to be doing lots of reps and things. You don't want things flying out of your hand. You want things to be comfortable. And so that's where we really focus on the customer experiences. Our stuff's made overseas, but we have, Hunter and his brother have both traveled over there to actually look. We have a quality control manager over there. So before stuff comes over here, we're looking at the product that comes out of the factory and like, putting our eyes on it, literally putting our, eyes and hands on it to make sure that it's, and so we actually have athletes, my buddy Hunter was who started the company. He was, an Olympic lifter and won nationals and things like that. So he's an athlete himself. And so, you're not just, there's not just some, old guy out of shape who's starting this, company and doesn't know or use the equipment or something like that. You have real athletes who are using the equipment and actually going over there and putting their hands on it and giving the stamp of approval. So, again, my buddy Hunter, he knows exactly what he's looking for because he uses equipment himself. And, we grew up lifting on Eleiko and other, real high quality stuff from Europe and things like that. And so when he started this company, he, in his mind, it's like, we want to create a company that's on par or better than that, because there is a really experience difference when you get a really high-end piece of equipment and you can just feel it in the quality, and like you said, in the knurling and the ball bearings and the way the bar spins. And I'm kind
it's
of
like
nerding out
music.
right
I know,
now,
I
but
get so
you start
excited.
talking about it, you're like, oh man, I'm getting a little sweaty talking about it. It's like but no, I mean, I kind of totally nerd out on the quality of gym equipment. And that's again why I started working with my buddy on this and doing coaching on as well. But I got out of construction, and as much as I love that, and I love demoing stuff, I love breaking stuff. So breaking stuff and smashing walls was always fun. But I kind of put all my eggs into the fitness basket, and that's really where my heart's at. So for me, as an athlete myself, I've come to appreciate high quality stuff, and that's what we want to put out there, is the absolute best of the best, and so that people can have a good experience when they're lifting and training and competing, but also have the best equipment to come home to and accomplish their goals.
Awesome. So you were rage rooming before rage rooms were a thing. You were able just to take out all that aggression with like a sledgehammer, and that's amazing. Man. See, you could just take all those skills and now do rage rooms too. They're like super popular.
Yeah, that was part of it for me. It was just, I felt like, in the days when we'd have jobs where, I'd get the call where it's like, hey, we got to take these walls out. I was always like, all right, here we go. I'd get my sledgehammer. I'd get all my toys and get the boys, and we'd go there and start smashing, crank up the AC/DC, and we'd rip that house apart. It was fun, man. I'm getting paid to do something we love. So absolutely. It's
Sounds
a bunch of
amazing.
Vikings running around with their, yeah, it was wild. In fact, I'll have to show you some videos sometimes. I have a couple of them when we first started the company where we almost made a game out of it. It was kind of funny. I had some hockey gear. So we were literally wearing hockey gear, running through the walls and not even using the equipment. So I don't know how safe that was, but once I got a little bigger, I kind of had to, follow the OSHA rules. And once we got some employees, it's like, okay, we can't be running through walls. We have to wear safety glasses and do it the right way. So
Shit,
still fun though.
I can relate to that. Back in the day, in my early days, I used to take clients to like rock shows in bars.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
could never get away with that now. But back then I was like, well, you're going to be sober going forward, so you might as well get used to it. Come to a show with me. And so I just bring them all with me. And of course,
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
I could never get away with that now. But back then, it was awesome. I thought it was great.
Absolutely.
And of course, they thought it was
Hell
great
yeah.
too. They're like, wait, this is rehab?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, we get, and that's why I think you and I connected right away. Is there's so much political correctness or normalcy. You gotta be a certain way. You gotta act a certain way. You gotta, your business has to fit into this little box of normalcy or whatever. And I'll tell you what, I think, especially with doing rehab things or whatever, especially people who've been there and done that before, uh, they've had that same experience, and they want something different. They want something real. They want something that is outside the box, and that they can really connect with. Because, you know, I mean, even with fitness stuff, when you go into a gym and it's the same thing, and the way people coach is the same thing. And I'll tell you what, most of the people that I've really connected with in my business is because we do things different. We have fun. We go outside of the box, and there might be not a lot of people who like my message or the way that I coach or whatever. Especially being up in Seattle, I tend to be a little more rough around the edges and right wing and gun oriented and all that stuff, which is kind of the opposite of the way that the people that I live around up here. But I'll tell you what, that it connects with, and to be honest with you, I don't know if I want to work with those people. So I'm drawing the people towards me that I really do want to work with and that I connect with emotionally and things like that. And when you're working with in coaching and the type of things that I do, and I know that you do, developing real relationships is such an important thing, when especially when you're dealing with someone's fitness or you're dealing with someone who's rehabbing from something. Man, that those deep emotional connections are what really make the difference. You're not just someone's coach. You're becoming someone's friend, and depending on how deep you get with them with your coaching or your rehabilitation or whatever you're doing, like, all those things are connected. And so some people, have the privilege of working people with share things about their lives that pour over into those aspects of their lives with fitness. And you get to really know someone. And so doing things a little different and giving someone an experience that isn't cookie cutter, I think, helps people really accomplish their goals, whether it be fitness oriented or whether it be getting themselves on the straight and narrow and away from drugs and alcohol, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the big difference that I've noticed, like from our areas, because we're both on the West Coast, is and where we're both different is we tend to, and I do this with our clients and our staff, is we hold people more accountable. Whereas like in my industry, it's very easy to allow the victimhood, let's feel sorry for them. Let's, coddle them. And that doesn't really get people well. I mean, there's moments where, they're going through a hard time where that would be appropriate. But as far as like the handling in the fitness world and getting people to overcome addiction, like leaning them towards being like a little thicker skinned and accountable for their actions and accountable for their past and accountable for their time in the gym, I think is really important. And it's different than what we see out here, which is almost the opposite. So I think that is why we stand out on this side of the coast. And it's just a huge broad generality of, the whole West Coast being a certain way, but definitely I think that's what makes us different out here for sure.
I think you just said it. You touched on something that I just had a discussion with a buddy last week, and a really long discussion. And we, especially up here, being on the West Coast, we live in kind of this instant gratification society, right, where people want they want it all now without doing the work, whether it be, again, a perfect body with their fitness, or, they get themselves into drugs and alcohol or whatever, and they want to just go through some program and be done with it or whatever. And there's some real hard work that needs to be done. And the people who really make those changes, you gotta go to places that are difficult and painful, and walk through them. And
Mm.
that's why people who I know who have dealt with addiction and walked through it and walked through the fire, so to speak, and done what's necessary to do the work that is necessary to actually make the changes, to put those things finally behind them. You got to be a tough person, and you got to. So I congratulate people who have gone through that, because my sister is one of them. I love my
Mm.
sister to death, and she dealt with, and I'm not telling her anything she wouldn't tell you, but she's a teacher now, got her master's degree, just bought a house, is happily married and stuff. But she was had meth addiction and for a long time, and uh, she got into rehab and got through it, and did all the things that she needed to do. And she's just a tough person and went through a hell of a lot that would have killed probably a lot of people. And watching her go through that process, a lot of people are judgmental of people who go through those things because they don't know anything about it. They're like, oh, why did they even do it in the first place? Well, when you're dealing with something who has an addicted mind, it's almost a disease that they have to overcome. And you have good people who get caught up in something that they never intended to, and they have to get out of it. And cheers to those people that you work with, and to my sister and all the people like her who are willing to do whatever it takes, because it is a monster of a thing when you see someone who's caught up in something like that. And then they hit that point where they're willing to do whatever, and then they entrust themselves to someone like you, or someone else, and say, okay, let's do this. And then they finally do it. It's an awesome thing. And
Well,
it's
and a lot of times, and we've been told this by, parents, visitors, as our clients are almost even better off than your average person who never had to overcome any adversity in life. Like, there's a lot of people who make all the right moves and do all the right things, and they lead a really ethical life, but they don't have to overcome much. And so their thickness of handling adversity, as well as their depth, isn't experienced as
yes.
someone who's gone through shit
Oh,
and like dug
100%.
themselves out of it and then learned from those lessons. And so I almost count it as like a blessing if
Absolutely.
and when we can overcome something very significant like an addiction or something like that. It's huge. And I think even in especially in your field, because I also have fitness in my thing, when you go from being unhealthy and fat and all these terrible markers in your health system, and you can swing that pendulum over through lots of hard work and see the result on the other side, there is no better feeling
Oh
than
my
that.
gosh. It
Yeah.
is great. And, I'll take that a step further in saying that I think that there's beauty in redemption. And
Mm.
it's kind of like I equate it to like a new car and an old car. It's like there's something beautiful about a new car that has a smell that's has that new car smell, that doesn't have a scratch on it, doesn't have a dent on it, has never been abused or molested or taken, out on the dirt roads and things like that. There is something beautiful about that. But I think there's something even more uniquely beautiful, and I think even more beautiful with, that old beat up car that someone finds in a field, and it's rusted and broken and almost at it on its just kind of last leg and lost, and someone takes that and still sees the value in it and brings it back, works on it, restores it, makes it better than new. And you have this new beautiful thing that has this past, that has this history, that the new car doesn't have. And I think that there's something uniquely beautiful in that that you can't have with something that has never experienced those things. And so I think it is the same. It's the same with people, at least for me. And is, you have, man, there's a unique resilience that people have, like yourself and other people who've gone through those things, that people who haven't gone through them just don't have. And there's a survival quality there. There's a resilience, there's a strength there that you simply just can't have unless you've gone through something like that. And so in that sense, I think that, especially with the way the world is, and I think about my sister, and I know I'm just kind of getting to know you as a friend and things like that, but I know enough about you to know that you're a very strong person in a way that most people aren't. And I think a lot of that comes through having those type of experiences and getting through them, right?
Yeah.
And coming out on the other side victorious.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in society today, and I know you witness this yourself, what's being thrown at us, what we're being programmed is to take something for the instant fix. Like you touched on this earlier about the instant gratification. And even in the rehab, well, no, especially in the rehab world, there's so many different rehabs and modalities that are like, oh, let's just, swap out those medication or, that meth that you're on. We'll put you on 3 different medications, help you sleep, help you eat, help stabilize your mood. And we're just going to fix it like this. And so that being the predominant way of helping people these days, it really is a feat when you have someone who's willing to do the work. Just like with you, I'm sure you have people who start and they like after a week they're sore and they're tired and they didn't instantly see the results, so they're like, this isn't for me, because they just want that instant fix. Like society is training people to not put in the work but to take it easy and look for the easy solution, and there's just no pride and joy in that. That's just it sucks. So it is cool that we can push people and show them that it's okay to go through the pain, because that's where the pleasure comes, is on the other side of that.
Totally. And all the things that have meant the most to me in life, I won a national championship years ago in powerlifting, and it was one of those things I had to work really, really hard. Or I had to think about some of the things I had to do to get there, just the sleeping and eating and training. And I was going to college at the time and was working a job, and it's like I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew enough about the people who would be there to compete against me, because with powerlifting you can kind of gauge who else is out there by looking at the articles, and they post the results of other things online, and they have Powerlifting magazine where you can go in and see the results. And so I was kind of putting the numbers together of like who might show up, and so I knew what I had to do to get there. There's a couple other guys that were right around the same strength as me that I knew were going to be there in Chicago, and like I knew what I had to do to win. And so I had to develop a program for myself to do that. But I'll tell you what, it made it so much more enjoyable to me to have accomplished that, having done the hard work to do it. I mean, if I had just been able to take a magic pill and show up and win, what made it special is all the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it, and then you come out, you put everything of yourself into it, and then you come out victorious. It's something special, and especially with probably doing rehab, I can only imagine is that you put all of yourself into it and you really go for it that time. So many people have been through that multiple times, but then there's the success stories, the people who finally get sober, get clean, and man, the stories that they have about leading up to that point is incredible, and the work and the effort they had to do it, and it makes it something. Once you are sober, I'm sure you want to protect that sobriety because of all the pain and effort that you've gone through to get it right.
Yeah, for most people. Of course, there's some people who are like, now I got these cool skills. Let me go just try to be an occasional user. It'll be
Sure.
okay because now I got the skills. So, there's always the people who are going to push back and still try it again and think they, got this thing beat. So, we see it on all sides, but then there's definitely the successful ones who are like, it's not for me and I just need to leave that behind.
Sure.
For sure.
Well, then you said it earlier, we and that's one thing as a coach, and probably what you do is we're fighting this instant gratification society. So we live in this. That's what people are being inundated with. We were talking earlier about how people are. Well, a perfect example is just look at some of the commercials and ads that they have on Facebook for fitness. It's like I literally saw one the other day that showed this chiseled guy, and it's like don't go to the gym, come to this place and get some man boob sculpting and take these pills or what. And it's like, okay, those are things that I think people can do, but I think what you do is like you start with, like eating healthy, you start with training, you start with the things you can do, and you prove your body the best that you can with those things. And then, if you're not quite happy, then, a little people do a little bit of plastic surgery or this, that, that's fine. But with the whole idea of it's like you're starting from the wrong place in the sense that they're encouraging people like, don't do the work. Why the hell would you want to do that? Just
Right.
cut it off or laser it off or do this. It's not even starting there. And so it's like people just don't want to do the work. And as you know, the things that are most enjoyable in life when you earn it and you do the work, it's one thing to have a body that's been made the way that it is because of lasers and plastic surgery, but it's another thing to have that same body if you do it through hard work.
Right.
And especially if you do it through hard work and then you fine tune it a little bit with other stuff, that's great. But
Yeah.
to start with, like, don't do the work, just take the easy way out.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to fight people on is the first question I get a lot from people is, they want to have a diet, nutrition, and training program, but it's like, okay, well, what diet pill can I take that's going to just expedite all this? Or what's the least amount of work that I can do and get the best results? And that's where people are starting from in their mind. And the bottom line is maximum effort produces maximum results every time. It's a simple
Yeah.
equation with fitness. It's like the an equation of consistency plus intensity. If you work out hard, consistency, you're going to get results. And with fitness, just like with going through rehab or anything, like the results you get are directly related to the effort that you put into it. Man, there's no other way around that. And so it's kind of like the person who, it's funny because I had friends in college, you're studying for this test and they're not going to study for the test, but they're making up this elaborate way to cheat for the test and spending all this time. It's like, dude, if you just took that same amount of time and studied for the test that you are to make this cheat sheet and do this elaborate bullshit you're doing to try to, you would have just done just fine. And you also would have learned something too. And that's the thing is people, it doesn't take that much. You can go into a gym for 45 minutes a day if you're consistent about it and just spend that little block of time, which is, people waste that much time on Facebook or shopping or doing or having a cocktail every single day. And if you just invested that little bit of time, you just did it every day, slow and steady wins the race. And you just little by little, you get in better shape if you just keep doing it. And most people don't want to do it. They don't want to do the work. They just, they want the easy way out. They want the quick fix. And so as a coach, it's not just about giving someone a cookie cutter diet, nutrition, training program. Part of what I do is literally going back to it's motivational psychology. I mean, you have to, if you really want someone to make some changes, we have to dig deep. And some of the first questions I ask them are not only what do they want. So we start with what do you want? I mean, that's the simple, basic question. And sometimes people don't know what they want, so I help them kind of develop what they want. But that's really up to them. They decide what exactly they want, and once we figure that out, then we develop a diet, nutrition, and training program around that to get them to their goals. But in that, like, you have to help people identify. One of the things I ask them, my clients, are what are one or two, maybe three things that have held you back in the past that you feel are like unhealthy habits in your life that have either prevented you from sticking with a fitness program or prevented you from starting, or that have caused you to just fall off the proverbial wagon. Excuse me. And, we start there because that's where most people struggle, is the motivational psychology. Anyone can go on right now. You can type in Google 12-week training program and it'll pull one up for you for free. So as long as people have the motivation to do it, like, you can have a free training program, just go do it. But the disconnect for people is not the lack of information. I mean, Google can tell us most things about what we want to know. The disconnect for people is the motivational psychology. How do you get yourself to get up every day and do the work?
Mm-hmm.
And that really comes down to really digging deep with people and first of all, identifying those unhealthy habits that they've programmed themselves into their whole lives because they've done it so many times. And then again, identifying some new healthy habits and then training them into that. So, we first identify all the unhealthy habits that have, that they've again trained into their way of thinking and the way of doing things. And then we help them identify and create new healthy patterns of action. And then we start integrating into their lives, and doing it consistently. And then you repeat those things enough, and then they become habit, and hopefully they stick, and then you continue that new healthy habit. But it does, like anyone. I mean, I've been doing this my whole life, but even when I kind of get off track, that's why I have to keep redefining new goals for myself. I kind of do things in 12 weeks or 90-day, my year in kind of 12 weeks and 90-day sections. And I set new goals for myself, and every 90 days I kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what do I want to do? What's a new thing? What's something else that I want to do? Like right now, I recently turned 41, and so my goal for the 12 weeks prior to that was to get myself into the best lean physical shape that I could, that I've ever been in. And so once I accomplished that, then it's kind of like, okay, now what? What's my next thing? And so I'm, training for an MMA fight this fall. And now I'm kind of trying to decide, like, how do I want to be in that? Do I want to put on a little muscle? Do I want to be a little bigger? Do I want to do a little more powerlifting? And so for me, it's kind of fun because once you really get into it, you've been able to learn how to manipulate your body and your strength and your muscle through diet, nutrition, and training. And that's where the discipline comes in. And that's where I really want to see people go, is that they can be in control of their lives and in control of their bodies, and be able to, in a healthy way, and be able to, do what you want with it. Your body is a tool, and it should be something that you're able to enjoy and use for work and use for life, and enjoy it. And that's, that's one of the things that I connect with a lot of single parents, is that a lot of it isn't about them per se, although it should be. You need to be the reason that you do this for yourself, just like going to rehab. It needs to be for you and about you. But those other motivations are good. A lot of people start because they want to do better for their kids, but life, like, we want to be in shape for life, and we want to be in shape be fully present with our kids and our loved ones and our romantic partners and things like that. And I firmly believe that you can't fully enjoy life if you're unhealthy and out of shape, because there's so many things that I love to do that you have to be in shape to do. And so, whether that's in the mountains and, in out in the track, or in the bedroom behind closed doors, whatever it is, you're like, you need to be in shape for life. And the people who I think who are happiest, who can experience the most, and that's true of me, because I've been overweight. I've been almost 300 pounds before, and I almost passed out getting out of bed one time. I was like tying my shoe, and I was breathing heavy, and it's like, good Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's so much more enjoyment in life when you're not worried about your physical either appearance or how you feel. So I wholeheartedly agree. And I think a lot of it, besides the consistency, is also just the discipline. And I think that's where people get bored or disinterested when they're not seeing those instantaneous results that they're seeking, or yeah, so like I've known a lot of people that'll like be really disciplined all week, and then kind of like let it all go over the weekend, and they're like, why aren't I making any progress? And it's like, well, you're spending 5 days doing all the right things, but you're unraveling it with those 2 days of full, like, not keeping in the discipline. And that's why you're just like, you're going at this rate, whereas if you were fully disciplined, you'd be going at that rate, which that's where you see, then you have the magic, and then you earn, I don't want to say earn, but you earn a place of like homeostasis, like after you've been doing it long enough. And that's kind of what I've gone through in the last few months. I've been traveling so much. My discipline has not been that good. I ate a lot of fruit. I'm normally a keto person, so I ate a lot of fruit, tons of sugar there. Wasn't, in the gym every day, but my body was able to maintain through that because of all the work that I'd done prior. But in the past, if I tried that, I would have put on, 20 pounds, and it would have taken me 3 months to get that back off.
Sure.
But you got to earn it. Like, you've got to earn it. And I think, I can see, and I know you're definitely at that place where you've earned it, where you've allotted yourself a little freedom, whereas people in the beginning shouldn't allow themselves those freedoms, because those freedoms tend to lean into unhealthy habits that they're trying to break.
I agree. I think you just said it. A lot of people, especially people who are doing low carb things, and you know enough about this to know that, there's a science to this whole thing. Like, people who are doing the keto diet, well, obviously you have to be in ketosis to for the magic to work. And so what people will do is they'll toy around with it, like they'll eat really healthy all day or for a couple days, and they get themselves sort of in ketosis and they think they're doing really well, and then they'll give themselves a cheat day or a cheat meal or a bunch of them, and then they throw themselves out of ketosis. And then the way that particular diet works, you have to do it a certain way, and if you don't follow the rules, you're not going to get the results. And so people get frustrated. Precisely what you said is that their body is still their homeostasis, or their body is wanting to go back to that overweight place that they're in, because they haven't gotten out of that for long enough and retrain their body and almost developed a new body type. Some certain people, all of us kind of have our genetics play a factor into. So if you take one person who eats the exact two people who eat the exact same things, but you have someone who's let's say, an islander or something, is just a big bodied person naturally in the way they are. You take someone else and they're lean. I've known a couple people that I used to work with who seems like they could eat literally anything and as much as they want, and their metabolisms are just insane. And so you can take two
I hate
people.
those people. No,
Yeah, right. Me too, because I love
I've always
food,
hated
right?
those
I
people.
love food, and I love all the terrible things too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's frustrating for me to be, to have to sometimes withhold those things from myself. But I do, like you said, I do have a reward sort of system for myself now where I do earn it, and it's become second nature to me now because I've done it for so long. Where I almost don't like to eat certain things. You see greasy food, or you see the sugar, and you see it, and you're just like you're just almost like, I don't even want this. But until you get to that point, it can be a struggle. And I think what you said is exactly right. Where especially in the beginning, you have to push yourself through that. You have to push yourself through the cravings, the desires, all the things that you are trying to train your body out of. And then once you get to a better place and you've earned it and you've changed your body, then you can afford to, again, excuse me, for me, it's one day a week. Like I eat pretty healthy, pretty clean all week. And then get myself a Saturday where I have a cocktail with the guys or go have some beers or eat a pizza. But I'm otherwise pretty strict, and I don't screw around outside of that. But food is
Pizza's the
such a
best cheat
social
food
thing
on the
too.
planet.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and
If
it's
I
like
had
anything
one
else.
food to eat on a cheat, it will always be pizza and a brownie.
Hell yeah! And the thing is, if you're disciplined most of the week, and you kind of withhold yourself from it, and then, excuse me, you reward yourself, it tastes so much better. Like
Yeah.
if you kind of like only have it every once in a while, then it's like this thing you look forward to and can reward yourself with. It
Yeah.
makes it even better. So cheers to
Yeah.
the people who are holding it down and then reward themselves and can enjoy it even more. And that's the thing too, is what this really comes down to, if we're talking specifically about diet, is finding, I never put people into a cookie cutter thing, because what works for one person might not work for another. Low carb works great for a lot of people. It just simply doesn't for me as a strength athlete. Like I need those carbs for energy for a lot of the stuff I'm doing, but it works really well for some people. But the key is to find something that's going to work for your life, that you like the taste of the foods, and that you can deal with and stand and can actually enjoy. A lot of people, anyone can do anything for a couple of weeks. That's where we again talk about this instant gratification society, where people starve themselves, or they go on these Hollywood liquid diets and take all these pills and do all this crazy ass shit to lose 20 pounds for a pool party. But really what you're doing is you're screwing yourself up hormonally. You're screwing your all your systems up. You're starving yourself, and you might lose a little weight initially, but when you do things like that, your body goes into starvation mode and slows its metabolism down to prevent that rapid loss of weight, because that's not how you're supposed to lose weight. It's supposed to be gradual and healthy, not instantaneously. So your body has this response to all this instantaneous bullshit, and part of that response is to raise cortisol levels and lower metabolism, so that it hangs on to the muscle and the fat, because it's thinking it's going into a starvation mode. And so you might lose some weight, but then when you stop doing it, you gain all the weight back and more, because your metabolism's slow and your body is slowed down to try to save all those nutrients and store fat and all these other things. and raises cortisol levels, which is inflammatory and causes a host of issues. And so when people do these crazy short diets and then these yo-yo type things, and then they come out of it, they're in a worse spot than where they began a lot of times.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree with you because I've done 1,000 of those kinds of diets. However, I've experienced a lot of success in the last, I think, year or two is intermittent fasting, a
Yeah.
causation of like I'll only eat one meal a day or sometimes or two meals a day, but I don't snack and I don't eat breakfast and I don't do all this other stuff. Sometimes I'll go 3 days and I'm not starving myself. It's very intentional, but maybe it has to do with the caloric intake, or maybe it's that ancestral, like where you hunt and gather. You eat tremendously and then you might not eat for 3 days, and so
Yeah.
for some reason my body responds, or maybe it's because I used to do math, I don't know, one of those three things, but my body responds really well to that.
Well, and again, it's one of those things where um, there isn't a cookie cutter diet for everyone. And again, what
Yeah.
works with some people's bodies and body chemistry uh, doesn't always work the same with someone else. I know people who feel amazing on low carb. They have more energy than they did, and they actually have more, their cognitive function is actually better. But I've also heard the opposite from people. They're sluggish, they're slow, they
Yeah.
can't think as well. And so they have to get out of it, they get headaches and sick and so forth. So, but that diet you're talking about, I haven't done it myself, but I have a number of people that I know and a couple of clients that do it, and it works extremely well for them. And there's a couple other benefits to that particular diet too. For whatever reason, it can uh, stimulate your own natural pituitary gland to produce growth hormone and these other things that are
Mm-hmm.
really good for you. And for some reason, the way intermittent fasting works with the caloric intake and things like that, it has a longevity benefit to it, and it also has that recovery benefit and the hormonal regulation that a lot of other diets isn't a component of. So for whatever reason, that diet, there's a clinical research that supports the fact that it stimulates your own pituitary gland to produce natural growth hormone, which one helps your body gain muscle, recover, helps your skin, your teeth, your eye, it helps everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at people who are actually supplementing with growth hormone, it's a very expensive thing. And you look at people like Stallone and guys who are in their 70s who are still trying to look like Rambo, and that's precisely what they're doing is taking like growth hormone and these things that are very, very expensive because
Mm.
traditionally you get it from cadavers and other things that they extract it from or they make it synthetically, and it can be a very, very expensive thing and also dangerous if you're taking an exogenous form of it that's not produced by your own body. So the fact that you can
Mm.
get that benefit from just the way that you manipulate your diet is a huge benefit, and it's free. So
Yeah.
more power to you on that one.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that I do that helps is I just keep my body guessing, because like we talked about, like when your body is like, oh, we're going to starve now, this is what's happening, but I mix it up where I eat at different times every day, sometimes 2 days, sometimes once a day, but I keep my body guessing. Then it's not like holding on to fat. It's just confused and it does
Yeah.
what it's supposed to do. It's natural. It doesn't go back to this weird like,
Yeah.
well, it's 8 a.m. Where's my breakfast? Well, it's noon. Where's my breakfast? Lunch. It throws it into such confusion all the time that it works the way it's supposed to without hanging on to things.
Well, and it's like we look at the Pavlovian response. It's the same thing with our bodies, where you know you ring a bell every day, and then you feed the dog, and it will start to salivate because it's ready to eat, and you do that over and over and over. It's the same thing with your body, where you have these eating times, and your body will, if you do it the same, it'll literally you'll start to get hungry. Your body will start to raise its insulin levels and do all sorts of things to prepare for a meal. And some of these chemical reactions go in your body, like the release of insulin and other things, those cause your body to hold on to and store fat.
Yeah.
And so precisely what you're doing by keeping it guessing, it doesn't allow your body to get into that state where it's used to the same thing and it wants to maintain that, like we talked about, homeostasis. Your body wants to do the same things over and over and kind of stay in this place of fatness or whatever you want to call it. And that's again the thing with your body too, is like your muscles will only get as big and as strong as they need to handle the force or the whatever the weight that you're subjecting them to. And so if we want to continue to get bigger, faster, stronger, we have to continually subject our body to greater and greater demands. Again, when you train your muscles, you're not actually growing while you're lifting the weights. You're actually tearing muscle fiber down, as you know. And then when you sleep and rest, that's when you're doing the rebuilding process. And so part of it is to keep, there's this thing called, I'm trying to think of the exact term for it, but essentially, if you do the same thing over and over, you'll get diminishing results. And so if you do the same workout over and over and over, like for, let's say 6 months straight, you do the same sets and reps, you're going to get stronger and get bigger, but eventually your body, you're going to get diminishing results from that until you hit a plateau and you're no longer getting any stronger or leaner or whatever. And so that's when you go back to the drawing board and you mix it up a little bit. But there's a thing called, there's debating sciences of it. There's a debate whether it exists or whether it is, but there seems to be some amount of evidence that speaks to the legitimacy of like muscle confusion, where if you are mixing it up, you're not always doing the same things, the same rep ranges, your body can't get used to it, and its response is to continue to grow. And I know this is getting a little nerdy, but a lot of people go into the gym and you see the same people at the gym. A lot of people are gym rats and they're in pretty good shape, but you see them year after year and they look the same and they haven't gotten any bigger or stronger or whatever. And that's because you come in and you see them, they might put 135 pounds on the bench press and they do 10 reps. And then you watch them and they do the same thing day in, day out. And they've reached a point where their body has, they hit a plateau and they need something new, something different, some new stimulus to continue to get better. And a lot of people don't realize that that's how your body continues to make progress, is again, progressive overload. So here's where it gets a little nerdy. If you want to get the best results, you want to, again, continue to subject your body to greater and greater demands, but also do it in a way where it is tougher for your body to go to a plateau and get used to something. And so one of the ways we do that is like like with my programming, I'll use periodization, which is a classic way of kind of staggering your rep ranges to over a period, like say a 6-month period. The way that you might do 4 sets of 10 for a particular exercise and then 5 sets of 5 for a number of weeks. There's a thing called undulating periodization. It's a big word, but essentially what that is whereas most people would go into the gym and say do 4 sets of 10 every day for weeks on end. What this does is say you train your, like, let's just say bench press, for example, you train your chest on Mondays and Thursdays. Instead of doing like, 4 sets of 10 on Monday and then 4 sets again on Thursday and then 4 sets again the next, instead of doing that, undulating periodization would be like, so for my clients, like I have a number of, like on Monday, we'll do 5 sets of 5, as heavy as you can go. And then on Thursday, you'll do 3 sets of 15, as heavy as you can go. And then the following Monday would be 4 sets of 10. And then we just repeat that cycle. So 5 sets of 5, 3 sets of 15, 4 sets of 10. And it doesn't fall on the same day, but we continue to do that. And of course, we're keeping a journal, writing everything down so that we can look back and purposely add more weight or whatever. But by doing that, you're doing one of 2 very important things. One, you're preventing yourself from being bored. You're doing something different. You're keeping it fresh by doing different rep ranges. And so in that sense, it's mentally stimulating to be doing something different. You get bored, you're not going to put as much effort into it. You're not going to get the best results. 2, by doing what we were talking about, where you're continuing to change it up, you're keeping your body guessing so that it can't get into a place of homeostasis and it can't just kind of reach this place where it's no longer producing results. And then thirdly, different rep ranges produce different results. If you lift heavy and do low reps, you're going to gain more strength, maybe a little bit of size, but you're going to get strong. And then if you do 3 sets of 15, you might gain a little size, but that's really working on muscle endurance and toning the muscle and shaping the muscle. And then 4 sets of 10 10 is that rep range where you're putting like a hypertrophy phase, or the hypertrophy like zone where you're putting on muscle. So by hitting those different rep ranges, you're effectively hitting different muscle qualities. So you're by doing the 5 sets of 5, you're getting strong and producing the most amount of muscle strength benefit. And then by doing 3 sets of 15, you're toning your muscle, you're giving yourself some endurance by doing higher rep ranges. And then by hitting the 4 sets of 10, you're also gaining as much muscle as you can. So by doing that, you're making yourself a better athlete, but you're also preventing yourself from hitting those plateaus. I know I just got long-winded and kind of nerded out, but there is a science to this whole thing, and a lot of people don't understand that. And that's one of the reasons there is a need for the coaches. There are people who are willing to put in the hard work, but they're just doing the wrong things. And so when we come at it with a multi-pronged attack of the best supplements, the best diet, nutrition, and training, and then the best training that's available, and you put those things together and you combine that with doing hard-ass work, you're going to get an amazing result. But it's a multi-pronged attack, and coming at it from a scientific thing where we're taking the best things that science has to offer and say, what is the best possible diet that we can take? What are the best legal healthy supplements that we can take? What's the best training program we take? And we combine it and we work hard at that, and we see how far we can take ourselves, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the work comes outside the gym. It's your discipline in your diet. So, you can come in and work out really hard in the gym every day, but if you're just eating like tortillas and beer every night, you're not going to see the results
100%.
that you would if you were putting in the work. Okay. So here's my question. How many of your clients say to you, okay, if I do everything you just told me, will I look like you within a year? Do any of them say that? Because that would have been my question to you.
I've had a few people ask that, kind of like, well, I want to look a certain way. And so, I'm always open and honest with them about like the type of training that I do. So, the way that I do things is a little more extreme, which I would never probably, not extreme, but like my goals are different than most of my clients' goals, because I have a body aesthetic. I have a body aesthetic goal, but I also have a strength, a serious strength goal. So I want to maintain a certain level of strength. And most of my clients, at least the online ones recently, are more purely body aesthetics. And so we train and diet in a certain way. They don't care at all about like strength as far as like maximizing their deadlift or their bench or their squat. And so the way that I train is different. So we have that conversation. But what I'll encourage most people to do, like when we start off, is like choose a body type that you want. I mean, I don't like to compare myself to other people or have them compare themselves to other people. I mean, I think there's a healthy way to do it and an unhealthy way to do it. I mean, I think unfortunately, if we look at society, a lot of people are looking at, these bodybuilding magazines where dudes are taking stacks of different types of drugs and all kinds of stuff to look a certain way. And then, women are looking at these women on a beach who are airbrushed and all kinds of things. So they're trying to achieve something that is literally not attainable because it's literally not even real. Like those women, some of them don't even actually look like that because they're airbrushed or whatever. Yeah. And same thing with the guys in the magazines. Like, yeah, they're big, but they're also airbrushed and all kinds of things. I mean, some of these bodybuilders now are not even just using steroids. They're using what's called synthol, which is literally an oil that you're injecting like into your, like I saw a guy inject it into his bicep so that he gets like a bigger peak on his bicep, but then it gets infected and they're having to cut it open and drain all his pus. It's like it's not even muscle. It's literally just like injecting your body with an oil it literally causes inflammation, which makes things swell, and then you have bigger arms. And so you've probably seen these things on the internet with
holy shit.
A lot of it, unfortunately, is in second world countries where you get these guys in India and Africa who go to these gyms and stuff, but they get this synthol because it's cheap. And then you get these guys who are tiny legs, they're unproportionate, and they have these lumpy it's just it's a different type of body dysmorphia too. And that's an unfortunate part we talk about, getting too deep into this conversation, but there's a healthy image of ourselves and there's an unhealthy image of ourselves, and unfortunately a lot of it a lot of people's definition of what they want is defined by something that is not even based in reality. So, but what I will do with my clients, some of my clients, is say, okay, let's look at an example of a healthy body type that you would like to have. What does that look like? And sometimes that means, taking a picture, looking at a picture of a celebrity or an athlete, but an actual real picture of them, because it's actually attainable. Like, there's someone who looks like that, who's done the work to get that way. And then we look at, okay, what are they doing to get that way? And a lot of these people will share their diet, nutrition, and training. And for some people, they don't want to do that work. Like, if you look at the work that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson does to be in his shape, he's 52 or 3 years old. He's in incredible shape. But he travels around with the gym. Like, when he goes places, he's got a trailer with the gym. He eats a certain way, and he's eating all this stuff. Not to mention, I mean, despite he might not talk about it, he's probably on, a certain amount of, exogenous drugs to look that way. And so it comes down to having a real conversation with people. And with some clients, if they want to look a certain way, it comes down to, and as long as people aren't cheating or whatever with competition, that's one thing. I would never say, hey, you should cheat or whatever. But, for some people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they want to look a certain way, and they say, okay, I want to look like this guy. Well, then you have to have the conversation of, okay, well, that guy's probably on testosterone replacement therapy if he's that age and looks that way. And so, if you do, not only, this is what we have to do to achieve that. Look at the diet, nutrition, and training program, but also look at your, go get tested, look at your hormone panel, where you're at, because there's certain things as we age, like a guy who wants to look that way is going to be, he might look at some guy in the magazine who's his age and try to do all this, work his ass off in the gym, and is not going to get there. But it takes the real conversation of saying, like, hey, what is this person doing to achieve that? And in most cases, when you're looking at someone who's at a, at a high level physically, and they're over a certain age, then you have to look at hormone replacement and things like that. That's a whole different conversation. But
because there's just
really
some things that the gym won't fix, like, no matter how hard we try. And that's why, like, for plastic surgery, I'm not opposed. Like, if there's things that no matter how much you diet or exercise aren't going to fix, like after I had my kids, there was nothing that was going to fix my stomach. It was just, I had huge babies. So, but I knew no amount of diet and exercise was going to fix that. So for me, surgery was okay. And so, like, the same thing, like what you're dealing with your clients is, whatever you can fix naturally, do that. But then if there's things that just, no matter how hard you try, will not be fixed, then we can look at these other things to help.
Oh, sure. And I've known a couple people who've lost a ton of weight, both naturally and through, like, gastric bypass, and both of them great because they're healthier now and whatever. But then there comes the conversation of, like, the extra loose skin, like, no matter how much training they're going to do, that's there. And at that point, it's like, yes, do that, like, absolutely. And again, when it comes to these other things, like whether it be some wrinkles around your eyes, or you want a boob job or whatever, those things are great if you can be healthy and happy with them. But I always advocate for people to start with what you can control yourself without looking to surgery or medication. Like, start with diet, nutrition, and training. Get yourself as far as you can down that road. And if there's a few little things left over that you can take care of with these other things, then cool, go for it. I have no problem with that. And I would have no problem doing that for myself at some point, if it ever comes to it. But I just think it's more the mindset and the mentality of our society that just totally wants to push out any kind of gym work at all. I mean, I have literally seen commercials where it's like, don't go to the gym, sit on this couch and shock yourself with these electrical pads. And then, it's like, okay. I mean, and some of those things are beneficial for rehab. There's some of those things that'll shock your muscles while they're in place or whatever. And, like, but the idea of sitting on the couch and just sitting there and shocking your muscles into being, I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing. It doesn't teach you anything, doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't do anything for you other than give yourself some muscle spasms, and maybe, it's just the way our society is. And so fighting that as a coach is the biggest thing. It's not so much the physical thing as it is the mental, motivational psychology that we have to really dive into and work into. And that's where a really good coach comes in, because there's I've had been totally disenchanted with a lot of the big gyms that have their coaching programs or their fitness trainer programs. And essentially it's just, it's like trying to get as many cattle through a door as you can.
Yeah.
We want as many clients. We're going to put them through this cookie cutter thing, and there, some of it's sort of okay. Like you're working out, you're doing it, but a lot of these clients, as soon as they're done with you, or you're done with them with their old 2-week workout program, they're just going to go right back to where they were with their same unhealthy habits, because you haven't taught them anything and they haven't learned anything mentally or emotionally about themselves to change. And so
Well,
that's
yeah.
where we
And
usually
that's the
start and
problem,
end.
like with the magic pill, right? It's like it
Yeah,
could theoretically give you that instant result. But if you didn't do the work and you didn't put in the time, as soon as you quit taking it,
yeah,
you're right back to where you started. And so
totally,
that's why it's so important to do the work to get there, whether it's, rehab, overcoming addiction,
totally.
it's in the gym, you got to do the work to get the result, because if you don't, then you're just instantly going to be right back to where you started, and probably worse, because that's just how that works as well.
Well, and just the emotional reward, like you were talking about earlier, like it's one thing to look a certain way and feel a certain way, and that's all great. In fact, that's probably why most people get on drugs, is to feel a certain way, right? And they want to feel a
Or
certain
not
way, and
feel
they
a
don't want
certain
to feel,
way.
or not feel so precisely. And um, but when we can can learn to truly be the masters and commanders of our own ship ourselves, and part of that starts with our body. Well, it starts with our mind. When we're able to um, master ourselves, and no one's perfect about it, obviously, but when you're able to get to a place where you can sort of master your emotions and gain control of yourself, and then that pours over to every other aspect of your life, your body, your fitness, your business, all these other things. And so you start with the mind. You learn who you are. You deal with the dark places, the things that hold you back, the things that nobody wants to talk about, and you deal with those things, and you get real with yourself, and you get real with your clients, and you get real with the people that you're dealing with. And when you have those real conversations and you go to those places that not a lot of people want to go, and understandably, because it is painful and it can be painful, but when you do that, not only are you going to get real results, but you're going to take away an emotional satisfaction that comes from doing the work and going through the fire and through the pain that you simply can't get from anywhere else. And what's interesting about it is that thing that they're probably chasing by doing drugs or doing all these other things, and the thing they're trying to avoid, you actually get that in the end by doing it the right way. And a lot of us are trying to fill this void in our life with something, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or all these, even fitness. I mean, you can take anything and make it unhealthy if you're trying to fill a void that's there, that's not meant for anything else than what it's supposed to be. And some people, once you're honest with yourself and you go to that place, whatever it is, whatever void it is, whatever trauma you've dealt with, whatever it is that you're trying to cover up or fill or mask or whatever, once you go there and you heal that, or you deal with it, and then you do the work to heal yourself and to come out of it, and to accept help from other people who've been there before you, or whether it's a coach, a trainer, a therapist, whatever, and you do the work and you get through it, and then you start to really gain control of yourself, and you have that emotional release that's painful but also amazingly um, uh, comforting and empowering, that you've never had before. And it can only come from being open and honest with yourself and the people there to help you, but to actually do the work. And I'll tell you what, when you there's no greater feeling than earning something that is meaningful, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be earning your sobriety or earning your body or earning your health, or coming from a place that you were that was terrible, and you know that place where you were and the place where you wanted to be, and you did the work to get from where you were to where you want to be. You did that, and that satisfaction is something that can't be replicated, duplicated by anything else other than having done the work.
Yeah, you literally just laid out the map of how we help people overcome addiction. Like, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you just like hit the entire program, like nail on the head, handle the trauma, be comfortable with the void, like, have a positive peer group around you. So you literally just nailed my whole program on the head.
That's
So
awesome. And it's food addiction too. I mean, it can be anything, right? I mean, of
yeah,
course, I don't deal so much with the drugs and alcohol side of things with what I do, but certainly the food thing, and I understand that. I mean, I haven't necessarily struggled with drugs or alcohol addiction, although those I've had a number of people in my life who have been that have been really close to me. But certainly the food thing is I can identify with, especially with our family. We tend to be bigger people. Every single picture of our family is us sitting around a big table stuffing our faces with food, and we're all emotional eaters, and we're all fun, happy people, but we also deal with things with our emotions with food and eating. And I love the taste of food, and I love the social aspect of being around food. And so these are all things that I had to kind of overcome myself and identify myself and kind of work through. And even to this day, if I'm not vigilant and I kind of have a fucking attitude for whatever's going on in my life, I'll probably go right back to, having some cocktails and food and all this stuff that isn't good for me. And if I do that week out, week in, week out for a couple of weeks, well, guess what? I've gained 30 pounds real quick without noticing it. So I have to stay on top of it myself, because I'm certainly still subject to going back to that place if I don't stay on the up and up and keep myself vigilant, because that's where my genetics are, is to gain weight. And that's where, that's where my, well, even the way that I was brought up. I mean, my grandma and my parents didn't mean anything bad by it, but I grew up in a home where it's like, you have the clean plate club. You eat everything on your plate, and it wasn't like a bad thing, like you're gonna get punished, but it's like, oh, you ate everything on your plate. You're a man, or whatever. It's like, okay, my grandma one time, I think she even told my brother. My mom actually kind of chimed in and was like, "No, you can't tell him." She's like, "Well, Santa Claus isn't going to come if you're not going to eat all this stuff on your plate." And it's like, obviously she's not trying to be emotionally abusive or anything, but when you look back on it, that's a terrible way to kind of go about life, where it's like, you don't have to eat everything on your plate. When you're full and you're satiated and you feel good, that's the time when you stop. But we have this Americanized thing built this, and some of the way it's like, oh, I gotta finish everything on the plate and have this clean plate with nothing on it, or
Oh yeah.
whatever it is. It's
I
like
went
you
through
don't need to do
I
that.
got guilted that there was like starving kids in Africa. And if
Oh
I
yeah, I've
dare
heard
left
that.
anything on
Yes,
my plate, those kids in Africa were going to starve somehow. So
right,
I've battled that my whole life. Like anytime I leave food, I just feel
totally.
guilty. And so that's been a lifelong struggle of mine with that clean plate club, is the guilt and shame attached to not eating everything.
And that carried over into my drinking in college. I'm like, well, there's starving people in Africa who'd love to have a beer, and you know what? I better finish this one too.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't have waste. Or I think also growing up
Yeah,
poor, like for myself, growing up poor, it was like, you're lucky to have this food. So
oh
you
yeah,
better
that's
eat
a
it,
half
even if it was
empty beer. You got to
just,
drink the whole thing.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot attached to all of that. And so that I love how you utilize that with your clients in training them, because there is so much emotionally underneath that it sounds like you really go at and attack and help them with psychologically, outside of just the work in the gym and that sort of stuff. So that's pretty
Well,
awesome.
and it's really, I mean, it's kind of like if you really look at it, I mean, there's so many trainers out there that are either doing the in your face thing, like, we're gonna, you gotta get your shit together, we're gonna run you through this program, and blah blah blah, or it's like, or you go too far the other way, where it's like you're too accepting. It's like, oh, it's okay that you fell off the way. Like, okay, well,
Yeah, I
you can do
understand.
this and
Yeah.
that. Like, there's that place where, but somewhere in the middle is a healthy reality of a place where you can talk about the difficult things. And because really what this whole thing is about is, it's about life, right? When we're talking about fitness, we have to take into every other account everything else is going on, because when you do fitness, it's a part of your day, it's a part of your life, and everything else that's going on, especially if you have a family or a difficult career, or all these things are surrounding that and affect your mental status when you do go to the gym and try to get yourself healthy. And I think, you know no one sets out in life to become unhealthy and out of shape, obviously, but it's just one of those things that just life sort of happens, right? When you're in your 20s, you get out of college, everyone has this, you know thing, and they're all, they want to get a career, they're going to stay in shape, they're going to go to the gym, they're going to do all this. And it's like a lot of people, it happens when they get married, or unfortunately, they kind of settle and
Hmm.
they get married and they stop investing in themselves emotionally, and they stop investing in themselves physically.
Yep.
And it's not, no one, like, again, does it on purpose. It's just life gets busy, you have some kids, you're both working. um and as we get older, people tend to gain, 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds a year, and that happens. And what happens is, we get out of college, and a lot of people I know, they're athletes in college. They get out of college and they're in pretty good shape, and they start their career and get married, and they think they're still in good shape, and they kind of do a little bit of the gym, and they sort of do a little bit, but life happens, and they kind of go down. Next thing you know, they gain 5 pounds a year, and then they're in their early 40s, and they kind of look back and they're like, what the hell happened to me? And now it's like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's get to
Yeah.
let's change this up a little bit. And um I think that it's just one of those things where, that our bodies are the epicenter of our beings, and it's like we don't go anywhere or do anything without them, right? And so it's literally this thing that is encasing our soul. It's our body. And so um it's not just this throwaway thing. Like, we're taking this thing with us through life, and it propels us in everything that we do. And so, in my experience, because I've been at the other end of health, where I was not healthy at all, being at my height, 285 pounds, and was just, I mean, being 38 years old and not being, hardly, literally bending over and feel like I'm going to pass out, tying my shoe, and sweating, just walking down the stairs. And it
Hmm.
was just, I was depressed and had anxiety and a lot of things. And it's like, that is no way to go through life. And like, I couldn't even enjoy anything. I remember going during that time, my brother and his wife, we went on a hike, and they're a lot leaner than I was at the time. But I literally got, it was a beautiful day. We had the dogs. It was like a 2 mile hike. I got like 100 yards into it, and I just went back to the car and turned the air conditioning on and sat there for 3 hours while they did this thing. And I thought,
Mm.
I can't even enjoy my family right now. I can't even enjoy, and thinking, I don't have any kids of my own, but there's so many people that want to be fully present with their kids. And I see it. I took my niece not too long ago to this park, and I saw this guy. He's just sitting there, and you could tell he's like 380 pounds, and
Mm.
his kids are playing, and he's sitting there with like, it's like some, he had his, big gulp and like some fries and stuff, and he's just sitting there and he's watching his kids. And it's like, even if he wanted to, he literally couldn't be fully present with them. And then I saw another dad. He's literally running around the jungle gym with them doing the thing, and his wife's over there too, and they look like in their late 30s, early 40s, but you could tell that they're a fitness oriented family, and they're running around doing it too. Like, they're in there with their kids, or and it's like, that's being fully present. And sometimes I don't think you can be fully present with life, really, unless you're healthy, unless you're in shape to do the things you want to do. And we all want to
Hmm.
go climb a mountain, we all want to do these things, but there's some things that you simply can't do unless you're in good enough shape to do them. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm 41, which is not necessarily old, but it's definitely not young. And I feel better now that I'm in decent shape than when I was 30 and totally out of shape, because I was a really good athlete when I was younger, and then I kind of got out of shape when I got into marine construction. There was no gym. There was just kind of eating real unhealthy. And again, I went through a period of time just kind of letting myself slide. And then I literally woke up one day and I looked in the mirror, and I'm like, dude, what is this? I don't feel like an athlete, don't look like an athlete. I just like this overweight dude with a beer gut. And I'm like, that's not me, And
Yeah.
so I made those necessary changes. But again, like I said, it sneaks up on a lot of people. Life just happens, and you kind of get into this groove of just going on autopilot, and you gain 3, 4, 5 pounds a year, and you kind of get in the groove of being in a marriage, or being in this career that you're not really into, and you have kids, and you just kind of eat and go to work and whatever, and your body, one day you wake up and you're out of shape, out of health, and some people, their first scare is at the doctor. They go and they have high blood pressure or cholesterol, and it's like, hey, you need to make some changes before it becomes a real
Hmm.
problem. And that's a wake up for call for a lot of people. The problem with all this is that it's easier to stay in shape, maintain shape, than it is to get into shape. And so I did it at least early enough where I was in my early 40s where I'm like, okay, I'm going to make some change. But the older we get, the harder it is to get into shape, but the more need there is for us to be into shape to continue to live life. So it's a difficult road as we get older. So get
It
into shape
is.
and stay into shape, because staying into shape is so much easier than getting into shape. And so that's why it is, once you get into shape, keep going, baby. You know what I mean?
It's true. But
I'm
you
never going to
also,
get
I
into bad
think,
shape again. I promise myself that, and I just
good.
never going to go back there for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think a big part of it too is just also taking off the mental restrictions. I think a lot, like I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life as well. So I think
Well, you look great. Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
people get this like, oh, I'm too old, or oh, this is how I should look at this age, or oh, this is settling in, or like you said, this is settling. And I'm like, dude, do you realize you've got like probably 40 to 50 more years? You're really
Oh yeah.
settling now, and you're going to live the rest of your life this way, if not worse. Like, no, fight that shit.
Totally.
I'm not going to just like roll over and say, oh, this is as good as it gets and how it'll ever be.
Sure.
Like, it's surprising to me how many people start throwing in the towel at not
Yeah.
that old of an age.
Yes. It's like, oh, yeah, and I've told, yeah, and I say it jokingly now that I'm in my 40s, but if I'm being honest, I feel better now than I ever have in my life. But jokingly, I'll say, I'm 40 now, I can't do that, or I mean, I'm joking. But there are some people some of my friends who've literally thrown in the towel, where it's like,
Yeah.
emotionally anyway,
Yeah.
it's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't, I just don't feel it, and I don't, and that's the thing, is you get to a place, our hormones change, and men can go through male menopause too, in a sense, where when our hormones starts to change, that can affect our motivation and our mental thing for our out view, our view of life and everything. And so
Mm.
it's important to kind of take those things into consideration as we get older, because there are a lot of guys who, and I'm sure women too, but I since I'm a guy myself and I've been in that industry, I can see it. There's a lot of manly dudes who are like into construction and stuff, and they're all about it. They're all about just waking up early and working long hours and doing it, and like, they're in good shape and whatever, and they do that through their 20s, 30s, and early 40s, and they can keep going. And then then their body starts to catch up with them. The late nights of drinking at home after that, or they self-medicate with, a lot of these guys are doing meth or coke on the side just to go get through the day and to do whatever, and to drink at night to, they start their day with too much caffeine or a little meth or coke to get themselves up and going, and at the end of the day they drink themselves to be able to deal with the pain and go to sleep. And then you do that long enough, it catches up with you, and then you got this guy who most of his life, his body's been able to kind of be strong enough to do all these things, and then age starts to hit a little bit, and their testosterone starts to decline, and these things these abuses they've been doing to their bodies start to set in, and then they're in this place where they don't know what to do, and they're depressed, and they can't do the things they want to do, and a lot of guys are so pig-headed that it's like they want their body to keep working like it always has, and they don't understand why it's not. And it's almost like, dude, you're an idiot, like, look what you've been doing. But it's a real conversation, because that happens to a lot of guys, where they start to go through this and they have a knee problem or a back problem or whatever, and then they have this thing in their life where they start to have high blood pressure, and then they can't do the things they do and
Yeah.
want to do, and then they don't know, their whole identity is wrapped up in their workaholism or whatever, and then they can't do that anymore, and then it's like, now what? And then they continue to reach further down the rabbit hole of drugs and alcohol and end up screwing themselves up even more.
Yeah.
But fitness is such a huge part of that, and that's one thing I love about the stuff you shared about your program that you do with people, where it's such a fitness oriented thing, and the success rate of what you got going on is so much higher than a lot of the other things around the country that deal with this sort of stuff. And I think that you're, even though it's unconventional, you're doing something there that's working, right? And I think that the fitness aspect of it is such a huge key for people, because it plays so, when you really see someone take control of their, not just their mind but their body, how we feel about ourselves physically, is huge with
Yeah.
our confidence and our energy and our emotions and everything else, and especially for women too, because society puts such a heavy burden on women, or I should say, kind of to look a certain way, and to be beautiful and to be into shape and all these things. And so there's that unnatural kind of pressure that's put on people to look a certain way and be a certain way. But when someone really does love who they are and they've made those changes and they look in the mirror and they feel pretty because they are pretty and they're in shape and their body works the way they wanted it to and they feel energy and they feel sexy, man, I mean that can change everything, and it pours that confidence and energy pours over in every aspect of their lives. And that's why I love fitness and working with people, is when it really takes a hold of someone and they actually do the work and they start to see those changes in themselves, and you start to see someone before they didn't like themselves and they almost even hated themselves. Unfortunately, they looked in the mirror and felt disgusted or whatever, but you start to see them make those changes and you start to see them become healthy, and you start to see them again get real compliments from people that care about them. And a lot of times it comes from their wife or their husband, someone who hasn't been paying attention to them in a long time, and all of a sudden they start to make these changes, and it's like, oh wow, like, okay, like, hey, good. And you start to feel that not just for yourself, but other people around you start to notice that. And I love seeing that. And so that's one of my of course, I do a little bit for the money, but the biggest thing, the reason I got started in all this was for my own, because of my own transformation. And when I went through that and felt the confidence and energy and personal power that came from that and poured over in every aspect of my life positively, with my business, my relationships with friends, even though I'm single now, like personal relationships, it's such a powerful thing. And so that's why I'm a huge advocate for fitness, is that I think that, not that it's the answer to everything, but it is an answer. And so many things, in life is so difficult sometimes, and there are so many things that can stress us out and cause us to be depressed and all those things. And I'll tell you what, I've been on depression medication myself and other things like that in my life, and various times in the past. And um, there's nothing better than working out and maintaining that, and getting in the gym and creating community around that with other people, and enjoying your body and enjoying your mind, and making yourself healthy. And I'll tell you what, that's you get more out of that than anything that you would get from any kind of drugs, in my opinion. And so,
Yeah.
but there's a right way to
100%.
do it and a wrong way to do it.
I had a guy on my podcast just last week, and he said, I have some friends struggling depression, anxiety. You're kind of an expert in mental health. What do you say about that? I said, well, the first question is, what does their diet and exercise look like? Because 90% of the time, that is the underlying factor behind depression, anxiety, all these emotions, like you said, hating your body. Like if your diet and exercise aren't in, or you're not happy with how you look and feel, that is what's creating this dis-ease in your brain. And so, like I always say, like, and go get some sunlight too, which is hard in your area, but
synthesize that vitamin D. Absolutely.
Yeah. But those would be like my cure for everything: diet, exercise, and vitamin D, and then do the work.
Sure.
Do the fucking work.
And the problem with this whole thing, and the catch-22 of this whole thing, is the things that, when you're depressed, the things that you are going to be most beneficial to you are the things that you want to do the least, right? I mean, I remember being in that place where the idea of going to the walk or going to the gym was just like, it's the last thing I wanted to do, because I didn't give a shit about anything, but it was the key for me to get out of where I was. And so that's something that we have to, this whole thing is, if we're really getting into cognitive behavioral therapy and some real deep stuff, it comes down to, in some points of our lives, putting our emotions aside, because our emotions are so powerful that they oftentimes dictate how we think and what we do. But when you're in a place like that, especially with depression, or depressions that's directly tied to addiction or whatever, is to, our emotions are important, obviously, but to separate them and say, what do we need to do to get better? And regardless of how we feel, we have to separate our feelings, because we might not feel like going to the gym. Clearly, we might not feel like doing anything other than sitting in our dark little hole of misery and continuing to self-medicate or whatever. But we have to get to a point where we separate our emotions and say, okay, here's what we have to do to get better. I'm going to put aside how I feel and go do this anyway. And so you go do that, you do that until your emotions start to connect with it. You start to see the results, you start to feel better. And it sucks those first couple of times where you're going down the proverbial tunnel with no light at the end. You're putting one foot in front of the other. That's the hard part. And that's where people are real champions who can go through that and keep putting one foot in front of the other when they don't feel like doing it. Everything inside them's telling them to give up and just go use again, or what's the point of this? It doesn't matter. You hate yourself. You hate just the feeling of doing this, but you keep going anyway. And then you start to see the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And guess what? You eventually do get there, but it's the keep going part that is so important. And so few people, unfortunately, don't do. And, that's just what it is. I mean, I hate to simplify this whole thing down to that, but that's really what it is to keep putting one foot in front of the other, whether it's with your fitness or your recovery. And even in those times where, again, you talk about people earlier giving up in the first couple of weeks, that's the dark tunnel time where you got to put in the effort, but you're not seeing any results. And, the first 2-3 weeks, your body is just in shock. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you've been in, again, that place of homeostasis where it's been used to sitting on the couch, not doing anything, eating a certain amount of calories, eating all this shitty, sugary food, and it likes it. And then all of a sudden you cut all that out and you start doing all this exercise. Your body's like, what the fuck? Hey, fuck you. I want to go back to doing what I was the shitty stuff. Right. And so it fights you on that. And, you really don't unfortunately see results with, even if you're working your ass off, till about 4 weeks, then you really start to see it. And so between week 1 and week 4 is when a lot of people drop off. And then after that, you start because to be truthful, the first couple weeks, you don't feel better. You feel worse because you're sore. Your body is not used to it. You're literally moving muscles.
You're detoxing from all the crappy food.
Oh, yeah. And so there's all these things going on in your body that make you feel like shit. And so part of you is like, why would I want to continue doing this? But the problem is people give up before the miracle happens. And then you start to, instead of the training taking away energy because you're tired and recovering, then it starts to produce energy. And so then you get to a place where you do it in the morning and it defines the rest of your day. And it's like having your cup of coffee. If you don't do it, you feel off. So it's like, that's the place you want to get to, where it's like, man, I want to get in the morning because it starts my metabolism. I feel good. It sets the tone for the rest of the day. I start off with a win. I start off investing in myself. And then you take everything else for the rest of the day and knock it out of the park. And so, but yeah, it's those first couple of weeks, I'm sure. And I've never been through like a rehab thing, but I can say from the people I know who have been, and I'm certainly with the people that you work with in your own experience, that's got to be the darkest, hardest times, are when your body's fighting every single thing in you to not do what's good and to go back and do, it wants the chemicals that make it feel good. It wants the food. It wants whatever. It wants the negative shit. And so it's telling you want that. And it's with every fiber of this thing inside you's being, it's telling you to not do any of the good stuff, and it's making you feel like you don't want to do it, and it's telling you to go do all the bad That's a hard place to be.
Yeah. Well, and it's breaking that habit, right? Because there's been many years put into creating that person that they are. And so that breaking of that habit of who you and so much of like is wrapped up with not only physically, but mentally about is this who I am? Like they only know themselves as this other person now. And so breaking that habit and returning them to themselves, it is a process, no doubt about it. But that's why we have so many angles that we're hitting them with, all day, every day, so that they can like work through whatever comes up, because it is a huge shift in everything, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, everywhere you go about it.
Yeah, I love it. No, that's great. I love hearing those types of stories. And I'm kind of I know I have maybe this look or whatever, kind of people may look at me and say, oh, here's this emotionless meathead type of a person. But I'll tell you what, it's those types of stories that really make me emotional or get me emotional, when you see someone who's broken, depressed, and at the bottom of things in life, and they turn it around. It's a fucking cool thing. And I've seen that a couple times in my life with people that were close to me. And then a number of people, having worked with people, again, I was set up diet, nutrition, training programs with people who had just come out of a rehab center and all kinds of things. So, and that was part of their kind of instructions from their therapists is to like, hey, get a trainer, get it, let's get going. And so I've dealt with a couple of those people. And so I've had conversations with them about, all kinds of stuff in their lives. And so although I'm not a therapist, they shared stuff with me that was humbling to me and kind of made me see a different side of life and difficulties that's what's motivating to me when I see someone who has it worse than I do, who's able to come out on the other side of it and still, because there's been times where I complain too. I think, oh, I have it rough, or this is going on, or I'm frustrated with that. But then you hear a story like that, or you hear a story where someone is literally 2 years ago, like on the streets, homeless, like 120 pounds, a guy who's 120 pounds lost his job, and all of a sudden he's trying to get healthy, and now he's 180 pounds. He's getting to the gym and he's quit. He's gone through rehab. He's trying to get his family back essentially, and all these types of things. And it's like, that's amazing. And that's something to me that's like, okay, I need to stop complaining like this. There's people out there who are having so much more difficult than me, and they're making it happen. And I love that. I love seeing people, and that's again where I talk about the beauty of redemption. You see someone who's been through it, and then they come out on the other side of it, a bright shining star that can share their, and I think maybe you're one of those people. You can share your experiences with people and help them get from where they are to where they want to be.
I love that. Well, that's what I was trying to tell you. You should come for a graduation because I'm blessed. I get to see this every week. People come to the other side of where they were and just the transformation. And I cry almost every single week because
I totally would too.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was like, come on up. You're going to cry like a baby, but you'll love it because it is the epitome of transformation. And I think that's probably why we do get along so well, because you're in a similar field. Like, you love seeing the transformation and see that empowerment that people get as well. There's nothing cooler than watch somebody like basically get themselves to that place they never thought they'd be.
I went through sort of that with my sister. I'd gone to her kind of graduation from the thing that she had gone through years ago. And, one story that particularly just hit home with me is just incredible. So it wasn't the graduation of this gal. It was a gal who spoke at the graduation who'd kind of had sobriety for a long time. And so she had spoke at this graduation of someone who had been to those classes and had gone through and then came back as kind of a therapist. And so she had gone through all kinds of things, but her story was just so I guess horrific in some sense, but also amazing, and she had talked about now she's married and has kids, but at one point it's just like she was prostituting herself and doing all kinds of things that we would and you just can't imagine, now she's healthy and she has kids and she is just so but she's been through it, and she's dealt with it, and she shared it, and like she's fully transparent, and she has a husband who loves her, and he knows everything about her, and she loves her and has accepted her for who she is in her past, and she's accepted herself for who she is in her past. And it's not just about the person that she was, but it's the person that she is now. And that's how her husband sees her, and how she sees herself as this new person who came from this place and is now this, and she did it through hard work, and obviously she had people around her helping her, but this story was just like, there's so much more to it, but it was just this horrific story in the sense that the things that she went through, but again, just this beautiful story in the end of like, and she was at the worst place in life that you can imagine, and now she's at the best place. She's she helps people with fitness stuff too. She looks great, and her family's great, and they all look healthy and happy. And but her appreciation for life is so much greater than most people, because she's been through so much and can appreciate it that much more. And in that sense, like I talked about, there's beauty in redemption. When you have someone who has been to the lowest place in life, it makes it so much more enjoyable, I'm sure, for them when they get to a place where they're the best place, because they've been to the worst place and they know what that's like. And then you see people like that, and those are the people who are willing to help anyone because they've been through it, and they want to see other people get better because they've been through it. They know what that's like, and they can relate to it. And I remember before I'd gone through depression, I couldn't relate to anyone. My whole thing was like, oh, just pick yourself up, go for a run, just watch a funny TV show and pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, it's not that easy when you're dealing with for some people, major trauma or a chemical thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually theological, which was, I kind of went through this early midlife crisis where I'm questioning my whole existence in life, and it was just this existential thing that I won't get into. But um, as I drop my phone in bed, but for a lot of people, it's it's trauma. It's all kinds of things that you couldn't even imagine. And so you see someone who's gone through it, and they come out on the other side a strong, beautiful, amazing person who can just share their experiences, and they're just this beacon of light helping other people. I mean, I love that. Love
Mm.
that.
All right. So I want you to brag a little bit. What is your lifting? Tell me your deadlift weight, heaviest. Well, you can either do where you're lifting right now or your heaviest ever. I'll let you be
Well,
the
my heaviest ever, I have to do that because right now I'm probably not in the best strength shape. So let's see, my best deadlift was 705.
dang.
And my best bench, so it probably wouldn't have counted in a competition, but I did 505. That was like a off the chest. It kind of
Mm.
bounced it a little bit. Probably would not have counted, but wasn't wearing any uh, bench shirts or wrist wraps or anything. And then I did
So in competition, you have to do like the low
yeah, you
hold.
have to do a pause. Yeah, you come down to your chest, and they'll give you they'll say lift, and then you
And
you
then
push it up.
so that's like a dead hang, like pull up.
Oh yeah,
That's
for
yeah,
sure.
wow, shit.
But I only we're getting a little off track, but I only like doing raw lifting now because I've seen, having been around that for so long, they have equipment now where they've got guys benching like 1,000 pounds, but they have these
Dang.
bench shirts on where they're like this, and they can almost can't even pull the bar down to their butt. It's like I want to win because I'm the strongest, not because I have the best equipment, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big advocate of like just raw lifting with maybe
Mhm.
just a belt or wraps, because you start getting these triple ply canvas suits that people are wearing to like squat on. It's like at some point, it's like, what are you going to wear a forklift next time too? It's like you can't. I mean, at some
Like
point,
fucking
it's like
Iron Man, just like
yeah, like yeah. So it gets to that point, but yeah. So like a 705 deadlift, 505 bench, and then depending on this depth, I think I got to apparel with like 685 squat. I hadn't really pushed that
dang.
too hard, but I think ultimately my bench press, as far as like was probably my best lift when I was lighter. I was excelled at that because I got short little T-Rex arms, so I didn't have a long range to go there to some people. But part
But
of it's
isn't that
body
the case
mechanics.
with back squat too? Like we have the advantage where we don't have to go quite as low
Yeah,
as someone
oh
with long legs.
for sure, absolutely. And some of the best deadlifters are guys with short legs and long
Yeah.
arms. So they
Yeah.
have these short little legs. And I've seen guys who were much smaller than me. They're deadlifting 800 pounds, and you're like, how does that? You didn't even look like you lift weights, but it's like they're extremely strong. And I'll tell you what, when you're talking about men's lifting, there are some women out there right now um, who, wow, there's some gals throwing up upper 600 pound deadlifts, and they're 150 pound, 160 pounds. So like there's some
Wow.
really strong women out there, and they've gotten involved more and more with strength sports. So it's pretty cool to see. I was working with one
Amazing.
gal. She was 5'1", 5'1". I think she was 5'1". And when I would train her, she was just banging out 315 deadlifts, like for reps, like no problem. I mean,
Dang.
and so like I like taking her to like LA Fitness a couple times because people will look at her. She's just a short, cute little gal, but
Yeah.
you're just looking like, how are you? It just didn't even look right. You're just looking at like, what is happening right now? She's just so strong, and I loved seeing her lift because it almost didn't look possible that she could do it. She was just so strong,
And
and
not
watching
super
her lift that
bulky.
weight,
Like you
not
would
super
think
bulky.
that, when you
Just
associate
yeah,
women with like powerlifting, they're like bulky, but that's not the case. If they got
it's not the
technique, they're
case.
they're not like hugely bulky.
And some women have that misconception, like, oh, I don't want to
Ugh.
use the weights because I don't want to look like
Biggest
that's not how that
misconception
works.
about CrossFit
Yeah.
and women is like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
want to look bulky. It's like, do you know how
No,
hard you'd have to work out to look bulky? Get
no,
over yourself.
totally. Yeah. And you probably have to take stuff that you'd never take anyway to look at. Like,
Right.
I think it's hard for anyone to really train in a way that's going to make them look where people really start to look weird to me is when they start taking a bunch of drugs and they end up looking like a bull, right? Or something where it's not, it
Yeah.
doesn't even look, you got
Yeah.
so much muscle on you can't even move around. So
Or they
I
overly
think,
work like one area without the other, like their
yes,
huge upper, but then they got skinny little legs or
skinny
things
legs, you
like
got to
that.
balance
Yeah.
out a little bit. But
Yeah.
no, I think it's such a cool thing. And that's,
Same.
CrossFit
I
is
have
actually,
nothing but respect when I see muscle. I'm like, wow, I know how much
yeah,
work went into that.
no, it's cool. And I,
Yeah.
especially for women, like I love, it's kind of like the sleeper car thing to me. It's like
Mm.
I like seeing a car that doesn't look like it can go fast, go really fast. It's like you pull up,
Yeah.
next to someone who's in this little tiny car, and then they got 500 horsepower, and then it's like, okay, that's cool. Like
You're like,
there's nothing
damn.
cool. I mean, she's in great shape, but she doesn't look like she can do a 400-pound deadlift, but she can. And when you see it, you're just like, oh my god! Like I
Yeah.
like being blown away because I'm kind of a
Yeah.
strength sports nerd, and so the people that impress me are not the guys who are 400 pounds, 6'5", 400 pounds, who can deadlift 800 because you think, okay, that looks like you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's the little guys like after we get off here, I'll send you a video of this guy. One of the coolest lifters ever was a Bulgarian lifter. They called him
Mm.
Pocket Hercules. Little tiny guy. I think he was like 5 foot. But back in the 80s, he has the best I forget the scale, but he has the best body weight to lift ratio of all time. So he's way better even the big guys. But little tiny guy, he did I think he did 190 kilo clean and jerk and 150 kilo deadlift or snatch. So essentially, he took whatever 190 kilos, that's 400 and something pounds. I think he weighed
Dang.
140 or 150. I mean, he just boom, it's this little tiny game. You don't even look, but that kind of weight is so incredible. So,
Especially overhead like that. Like
oh
that's
yeah,
fucking crazy.
yeah, it's pretty cool, and that's one thing that why I joke about CrossFit sometimes, but I have a lot of respect for CrossFit because I came from an Olympic lifting background, and
Mhm.
Olympic lifting is not necessarily a popular sport. But powerlifting is a little more popular, but Olympic lifting, the clean and jerk and the snatch were never really that popular. A lot of people didn't even know it existed, and then the advent of CrossFit,
Mhm.
they utilized those lifts quite a bit. That kind of really brought a lot of attention back to strength sports. So as someone who's a strength sports nerd like myself, I have a lot of respect for CrossFit in that sense that it shedded a lot of light, and it's created a lot of money for my business and all kinds of things because a lot of the equipment that we sell and things are specifically for CrossFit and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And so,
Well, you should
um,
like it too
I'm just
because
very,
it's constantly varied. Like that's what I love about it.
yeah,
Like we talked about earlier, like that I never get bored with it. It's always
oh yeah,
something different, which I
totally.
absolutely love.
And you're doing functional stuff too. And a lot
Right.
of times when I like bodybuilding, but a lot of times it's just, it's an isolated curl just to get your bicep bigger, and it's
Yeah.
not a functional thing. And to be honest with you, some of the biggest dudes that I know, they might look huge or whatever, but they're the most unfunctional people and unfunctionally strong. They might be able to do a
Yeah.
one bench press at one angle from some huge amount of weight, but they can't kick a soccer ball around or run down the street or like pick a box up. And I remember dealing with this guy. I was at a competition and we're at the hotel. We're waiting, and he's so much bigger than me, but his back, someone taped $100 bill to his back of his shoulder, just right where I can grab it now and still not. So, but he couldn't. He said, if you can grab it, you can have it. He literally
Uh,
he couldn't, and it's just cash hanging off his shoulder. He can't grab it
uh,
because he's so big. And it's just like, at some point, I mean, I'm not going to judge if that's the way he wants to look. That's cool. I think
yeah.
everyone should do that. But at some point, it's like, I like to be functionally strong. And
Same.
so part of me lifting weights and doing what I do is for me to enjoy life and be able to move around better and be strong so that I can climb a mountain. I can do this or that. And so that's why I like CrossFit a lot. It's very functionally based and helps you move for life. Right.
Yeah. Well, and like my biggest defense of doing it is like I just need to be prepared if there's a zombie apocalypse because
Yeah. Hell yeah.
lifting heavy or running long distance, I need a combination of both. I need to throw somebody over my back
Yeah.
and then run a mile. So
That's
that's why
always
I do
like
it so that I'm
that's
prepared
my
for the
excuse for
apocalypse
buying a new gun.
eventually.
Every time I buy a new gun, it's like the zombie apocalypse. Got to have another one. You never know.
You never know.
So I
Well,
You
But
never
the
know.
question is, do you got the ammo? You can have all the guns in the
Yeah.
world, but if you don't got
I
enough
got the
ammo.
ammo, baby. That's, oh man,
All
gotta have
right,
the
all
ammo.
right.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I go to, so every once in a while I'll go to these gun shows and they'll have like, I'm not the crazy weird guy, but sometimes you'll go to these gun shows and you'll get these guys who have all this bulk ammo and they're a little weird. They got all the camo on, they've got the conspiracy theories, and I'm like, all right, I'll buy from that guy. He's got a good price, and I'll just take all his stuff. But yeah,
All right. So
no, for sure.
at the gun show, how often do you get asked to show your guns at the gun show?
Occasionally I'll get it. You always have the guy. Yeah, you always have someone make a comment like, he was at the security guard at the door. It's like, you got to check your guns, sir, at the front door. It's like, do you have a permit for those? It's like, yeah, no, I don't. Or sometimes I'll be stupid. And I'll be the one who's like,
Come
sir,
on,
do you
it's
have any
kind of fun.
guns
It's a
on you?
compliment.
Just these ones right here, dude. I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
No, we can't. I'm a sucker for cheese dick jokes, especially if
Yeah,
it's gun related or yeah, totally.
totally. Awesome. All right. Well, will you please tell? I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, so thank you for that. And will you tell our listeners where they can find you, because your training sounds fascinating, and I love your equipment. I still got to figure out how to get. But you're right. I got to find space in my gym for that GHD. But I really need and want one. So
For
tell us
sure.
how to find you.
For sure. So giantlifting.com is the site. We just actually got a new site. It's really easy to navigate. All of our stuff and equipment's on there. So come check that out. And then actually right now, I still do have, I'm kind of in the process of putting a new uh I guess you'd call it website for my coaching, but the easiest way to get me hold of me for coaching is just through Facebook at the moment. So I'm working on a site for that, and I'm going to I got some stuff that I won't mention now that I got planned. That's irons in the fire is going to come out some big stuff here in the next year. That's going to kind of blow up my coaching business. But until then, Facebook, or just message me personally, just Jeff Theorell if you want to look me up on Facebook. JefFtheorell, and then message me directly would be the easiest way. But in the future, you shall see. I will blow it up, and there will be no questions about how to get a hold of me on that front. So
awesome.
yeah.
Well, you got to get an Instagram, because like 30 and below don't use Facebook.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for coming on the show. And I guess we'll be sharing a stage here in October.
Hell
So
yeah.
I'm looking forward
to it. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be fun, and it'll be in a fun place. And I'm looking forward to getting to hang out with you and the rest of the crowd, because I think it's a bunch of characters. I think we're going to have a good time.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And for sure we'll do a workout, because
hell yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
we do.
You bet.
Awesome. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Good stuff. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks.